streets of Frostville, a little town in the Midwest, had become a silent cemetery of dreams that had frozen in the biting cold of winter. The night revealed its cold hold as the sun sank below the horizon, creating long shadows that appeared to dance with the roaring wind. That chilly evening made me believe in ghost stories and other paranormal phenomena, even though I had never been a believer before. It all started when I made the decision to go on a winter adventure with my buddies in an effort to experience the thrill of the season. We decided to investigate the town's periphery, where chilly breezes mumbled legends of long-forgotten ghosts and archaic mysteries. We had no idea that the chilly night would spin a tale all its own, forcing us to doubt reality itself. The brisk air carried the sound of our laughing as we struggled across the snow-covered walkways. With its hazy radiance, the moon kept watch over us like a quiet protector. With its sparkling diamond-like icicles, the woodland seemed to be beckoning us farther into its mysterious embrace. The only sound we heard was the crunch of snow under our boots, a far cry from the jovial conversation that had preceded us. With their skeletal branches reaching out as though willing to reveal their secrets, the trees stood like silent sentinels. The temperature dropped, and we all felt a quiet discomfort. An abandoned home loomed out of the darkness as we traveled deeper into the freezing night. The building, a remnant of a vanished period, remained firm against the icy wind. Its windows gazed into the chasm like empty eyes. Curious, we walked up to the enigmatic building, clouds of breath rising briefly in the icy air. The front door creaked open, as though to say hello to us. We cautiously stepped across the door and entered a world that had stopped time. The smell of rot permeated the air inside, and our footsteps were the only sound breaking the silence. Every chamber narrated a story from the past, with the worn wallpaper suggesting long-forgotten exchanges. I felt a shiver run down my spine, and an uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach as we climbed the creaking staircase. We arrived at a hallway full with closed doors, each concealing a mystery of its own. Behind one of these doors, we found ourselves in a chamber filled with a strange blue light. As we stepped inside, the temperature dropped even further, and our breath created frozen clouds that hung in the chilly air. A mirror stood in the middle of the space, its surface reflecting warped reflections of our confused features. A voice spoke, just heard above the gloomy background. The voice whispered, "Beware the frost that binds the souls of the lost," giving us chills. The energy in the room appeared otherworldly, and the temperature dropped even more. Our hearts ached from fear, screaming for us to run, yet something kept us stuck. The mirror started to show images from the past, of a town engulfed in a never-ending winter. Its people's faces were painted with desperation and misery as the cold tightened its hold. The reflection suddenly moved, causing our own faces to twist it in pain. The voice came back, louder this time, reverberating through the freezing room. "You've awakened the frost, and it hungers for souls." We made a frantic run for it as panic struck, but the mansion appeared to be working against us. The hallways entwined like a maze, entangling us in its frigid grip. The shadows moved in time with our heartbeats as they danced over the walls. So the cold held on as we staggered along the pitch-black hallways. Frost slithered across the floor, wrapping its icy arms around everything. We could feel the heat leaving our bodies as the cold seeped into our very bones. We discovered a room glowing ethereally deep within the mansion. A frozen person, caught in the passing of time, stood at its center. The apparition had on a frayed coat, the frigid mask of death hiding its face. The voice came back, echoing from the frozen body, and the room began to pulse with an alien energy. Its intone, "Only by sacrificing a soul can the frost be sated," sent shivers down our spines. The weight of those words struck us, and dread descended upon the room. To lift the spell that bound us, one of us had to give themselves up to the freezing abyss. We looked at one another nervously, as a tight stillness descended upon the room. We all experienced the weight of the choice and the knowledge that our futures were at stake. With sunken eyes, the motionless figure appeared to be observing us, silently pleading with us in our thoughts. While we were arguing, the temperature dropped to an intolerable level. The mansion shook, as though waking from a protracted sleep, and the walls creaked. The distinction between the supernatural and the actual world was hazy, and time itself seemed warped. One of us moved forward and offered themselves to the frost, a sorrowful person. As the act of sacrifice was performed in front of us, the atmosphere erupted with intensity. The room throbbed with unearthly brightness as the frozen figure absorbed the essence of the willing soul. The voice came back, a little quieter this time, mumbling something in thanks. The frost has been placated, but this night's repercussions won't go away. The winter night has mysteries few can truly understand, so proceed with caution. The mansion appeared to sigh as the act of sacrifice came to an end, freeing us from its cold grasp. The ghostly blue light dimmed as the temperature rose slowly. The frozen form vanished, taking with it all evidence of the unearthly happenings. Once the first rays of morning appeared on the horizon, we staggered out of the estate. Before us, the town of Frostville appeared to be unaffected by the magic of the cold night. The snow-covered streets looked peaceful again, and the air seemed fresh. We said our goodbyes in silence, each of us still reeling from the previous night's events. Our spirits were forever changed by the revelations that the winter night had unveiled. We would always associate the town of Frostville with a place where the boundaries between the supernatural and the actual world were hazy. I can't help but wonder if the mansion served as a custodian of the town's long-kept secrets, or was just a vehicle for the ancient power of the frost, as I reflect on that chilly night. That night's reverberations ache on, a terrifying reminder that some mysteries are best left untouched. So I can't help but get a shiver down my spine as winter settles back into Frostville. I can't help but wonder if the frost still has a thirst for souls, waiting to be awakened by those who dare to walk into the heart of the winter night. The icy winds tell tales of forgotten spirits and ancient mysteries. As I made my way to the busy train station, the metropolitan skyline shimmered with 1,000 lights. There was a tinge of winter in the air as commuters' hurried footfall echoed off the platform. I had no idea that this typical night would turn into a horrifying story that defied reason. My train, the Midnight Express, had a reputation for being haunting. There were rumors of strange happenings and spectral presences all around the late-night excursion. Ignoring the cautions as mere superstition, I resolved to take the Midnight Express for myself since I was intrigued by the stories. The train's engine hummed rhythmically, offering a soothing background as I found my seat. The journey was made more mysterious by the intermittent flickering of the overhead lights in the darkly lighted cabin. I stared out the window, seeing the outside world turn into a strange dreamscape as the city lights blended into a continuous tapestry. The train's steel wheels clanked on the rails as it passed through the city. The city eventually gave place to wide, darkened pastures. Above, a great expanse of the night sky was covered in stars that seemed to sparkle with an unreal brilliance. It was unsettling and exciting to experience the Midnight Express's sense of isolation. The train dived into a tunnel as midnight approached, enveloping the compartment in total darkness. The passengers experienced a disconcerting quietness as the air appeared to get heavier. That's when I heard a whisper, a voice that seemed to reverberate around the little room, gentle and disembodied. It said, "Welcome to the Midnight Express," giving me the chills. I glanced around, but nobody else seemed to be aware of the enigmatic voice. As the train emerged from the tunnel and the whisper vanished into the night, I began to feel uneasy in the pit of my stomach. Trying to ignore the sensation as a figment of my hyperactive imagination, I concentrated on the train's repetitive clatter. Still, there was an underlying disquiet. I couldn't get rid of the impression that something extraordinary was happening as the Midnight Express sped through the night. My senses were tricked by the sporadic glow generated by the flickering cabin lights. Shadows moved in a merry manner around the walls, taking on forms that defied comprehension. The ghostly voice whispered again, whispering of secrets tucked away in the folds of the night. I looked around at the other passengers, wondering if they were also hearing mysterious murmurs. Their expressions stayed the same, lost in meditation or engrossed in books. It was becoming clearer and clearer that the Midnight Express was a secret society, revealed to those only prepared to face the mysteries that hid in plain sight. I couldn't get rid of the impression that someone was watching me as the train tore through the night. I could see faint shapes emerging out of the shadows of the cabin just at the limit of my eyesight. The sounds of whispering intensified, becoming a cacophonous symphony that reverberated throughout the rapidly moving train. The Midnight Express suddenly jolted to a stop in the midst of nowhere. The sudden stop caused a jolt throughout the cabin, causing my fellow travelers to cry out in shock. Over the stalled train, an eerie calm descended, and the air was thick with expectancy. Over the intercom, an announcement crackled, the voice ghostly and twisted. "We are not on any timetable when we get at our destination. People who are looking for answers can get off the ship, but be careful what you may find out." There was a murmur among the passengers as they looked at each other uncertainly. An unearthly energy seemed to thicken the air, and a palpable tension pervaded the atmosphere. I should have known better, but curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to accompany the few passengers who wanted to investigate the enigmatic destination. A freezing wind whipped across the barren landscape as I stepped onto the empty platform. The station was a time capsule preserved in a state of neglect. The tracks continued into the night and vanished into the blackness. The flickering lights of the station provided the only source of illumination. Once again, the murmurs resurfaced, their voices merging into an unsettling orchestra. An invisible force caused the air to shimmer and shadows began to move on their own. The figures dancing around the edge of my vision were too blurry for me to tell if they were genuine people or just tricks of the imagination. A shape outlined by the surrounding light revealed a figure emerging from the shadows. The mystery presence seemed to be speaking to the inquisitive passengers as the air began to pulse with an ancient energy. "You've set out on an adventure that goes beyond the confines of reality. The Midnight Express serves as a bridge between realms and a ship for explorers of the unknown." The figure's words reverberated in a disturbing way, and the people who were stuck began to feel inevitable. The station, caught in time, witnessed a meeting point between the paranormal and the everyday. The voices grew louder as we ventured more into the barren area. The temperature dropped, and an unearthly light cast an ethereal haze over the surrounding area. On the edges, shadows danced in shapes that were beyond comprehension. The Midnight Express seemed to tear the very fabric of reality apart. The deserted terrain unveiled tidbits of its eerie past with every step. Ruins rose from the ashes of a vanished town, a reminder of a past that time had forgotten. I felt shivers down my spine as the murmurs described horrific tragedies and lost lives. The shadow people became more definite, their faces etched in the faint light of the otherworldly realm. They appeared to be the ghostly remains of people who had previously lived in the abandoned town, caught in a never-ending state of uncertainty. The person who had spoken to us showed us the route to the crumbling mansion that stood out against the night sky in the center of the abandoned town. As we stepped through the barrier, the air crackled with an unusual electricity, and the interior was filled with the same eerie brightness that filled the Midnight Express, and with its opulence contrasted with the deterioration that clung to its walls. The estate appeared to be stuck in a time warp. The whispers became louder as we ventured down its eerie hallways, telling stories of a curse that consigned the souls to the barren region. Ghostly powers that ruled the abandoned town appeared to be channeled through the Midnight Express. The source of the ghostly murmurs was discovered in a room at the center of the mansion, which housed an assortment of antiquated objects that were all charged with energy from the other world. The artifact's existence as a testament to the precarious balance between the living and the dead seemed to pulse with a malignant power. A feeling of foreboding descended upon the audience as the figure related the background of the objects. It seems that the Midnight Express had evolved into a medium for the ghosts imprisoned in the paranormal world. The old energy that pervaded the abandoned village had inadvertently found a way through the travelers who ventured to disembark. It dawned on her that the living and the dead made an unspoken agreement. Although the Midnight Express provided a means of travel between realms, those who ventured to investigate the secrets that lay outside the boundaries of reality faced grave repercussions. With eyes full of eerie insight, the figure turned to face the items. Returning the items to their own realm is the only way to break the bond. The Midnight Express can only be released from its bonds to the paranormal at that point. The figure pointed to the objects, and something otherworldly cracked the air. The voices became louder, and the spectral energy seemed to swell. We had to decide whether to uphold the old agreement or become permanently linked to the Midnight Express and the eerie town it passed through. There was an energy in the mansion that shuddered when the objects were placed back where they belonged. The ethereal radiance that enveloped the area started to dissipate as the air shimmered. The shadowy individuals vanished into the obscurity, their silent presence lifted from the desolate surroundings. The Midnight Express roared to life again. With an intense silence, the creature turned to face us, a haunting thanks in its look. Even if you made the decision to end the cycle, this night's effects will not go away. For all time, The Midnight Express will serve as a route for people looking for the uncharted. A wave of relief swept over me as the train left the deserted station. The eerie murmurs vanished into the night, and the barren landscape blended into a smooth tapestry. The spectral energy that had intertwined the travelers' fates released them after they had been bound by the supernatural forces. I could gradually see the city lights as I peered out the train window. The usual clamor of city life appeared to provide a break from the surreal experience that had transpired. The story of the Midnight Express, with its mysteries and antiquated relics, had faded into the distance. However, I couldn't get rid of the notion that the repercussions from that terrible night would continue as the train approached the city. As a bridge between realms, the Midnight Express had permanently altered the structure of reality. The mysteries that surfaced in the abandoned village would always be enshrouded in the paranormal, serving as a terrifying reminder that certain travels cross the lines between the known and the unknown. As I moved through the busy streets, the cityscape was painted in the subdued tones of winter. The sound of distant car horns reverberated against the tall buildings, and the air was crisp. The city's winters had a way of drowning out the sounds, giving the place an almost dreamlike feel. I had no idea that the peacefulness of the season would give way to a terrifying story that would follow me for years to come. Everything began with an apparent benign offer from an old buddy named Alex. Even though it had been years since we had seen one another, there was an urgency in his message that intrigued me. He insisted on meeting at a cute little coffee shop tucked away in the middle of the city, somewhere the comfort of the brew would keep the bitter cold outside at bay. The strong smell of freshly ground coffee filled the room as I walked in. Twinkling lights decorated the warm interior, giving it a cozy feel in contrast to the chilly outside world visible through the windows. I noticed Alex in a corner, steam rising from his cup covering his face. As I approached, he looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of joy and anxiety. He went straight into the reason we met, telling me a story that would destroy all chance of normalcy in my life. Alex started talking about a number of odd things that had happened to him over the past few weeks. Late one night, it all began with an enigmatic phone call. The voice on the other end could hardly be heard over the static. A shudder ran down his spine when he heard a chilling whisper about an old curse. Alex recounted that the voice had warned of a terrifying occurrence that would take place on the coldest night of the year, and he did so with urgency. I listened to him describe the mysterious warnings and the sense of impending doom that pervaded the atmosphere, intrigued but also a little suspicious. I was skeptical, but Alex clearly felt afraid. He told tales of glimpses of a frozen wasteland and dreams inhabited by ice beings. His remarks had a heavy weight that begged the question, would I follow him in solving the riddle that had wrapped itself around his life? My curiosity overcame me, and we made the decision to travel to the center of the city on a wintry night. As we made our way through the freezing streets, the sun began to set, creating long shadows that appeared to reach out and embrace us. As the temperature plummeted, the previously familiar city took on an unearthly appearance. We were headed to an abandoned subway station that was said to contain the secret to breaking the age-old curse that had trapped Alex. The gateway appeared to be a portal to another world, hidden below layers of urban degradation and graffiti. The air became colder as we sank deeper into the subterranean darkness, and the far-off sounds of the city above melted into a faint murmur. The subway tunnels were a maze-like system that seemed to have its own will and turn. Every step served as a reminder of the strange silence that surrounded us, with the occasional trickle of water echoing down the barren halls. Walls covered in graffiti told the tale of a lost world while bearing witness to the passage of time. A feeling of dread descended upon us as we made our way farther into the subterranean labyrinth. The atmosphere grew heavy with an unsaid tension, and the walls covered in graffiti were illuminated by our flashlight's faint brightness, creating long shadows. A disconcerting symphony of sound was produced by the whispers of the wind outside that seemed to creep into the tunnels. Abruptly, the passageway led to a vast room with ancient symbols on the walls that gave out an unearthly force. A frozen puddle of water in the middle of the room reflected the little light, its surface strangely motionless. Alex stared at the pool, his eyes getting big with recognition, his voice hardly audible in the vast room. "This is the place," he mumbled. "The voice in my dreams led me here." When the temperature in the chamber fell as he was speaking, a stranger stepped out of the shadows, and I could see our breaths hanging in the freezing air. The figure was so thin that it appeared to be carved out of the ice itself. It was unmistakably human. A voice rang through the room, an old and sorrowful voice. "You've come looking for solutions to a generation-spanning curse. You have been led here by the frozen whispers, but there is a cost." The ancient inscriptions on the walls glowed with an ethereal light as the person gestured towards the frozen pool. An unearthly force filled the air, and a sensation of inevitable doom descended upon us. And the voice went on. "The curse will be released as the coldest night of the year draws near. Offering a sacrifice, one whose soul will become linked with the frozen whispers, is the only way to end the cycle." As the situation's reality set in, fear took hold of us. The weight of that decision weighed thick in the air as the ancient curse demanded a sacrifice. Driven by duty, Alex stepped forward, dread and determination mixed together in his gaze. With unflinching determination, he proclaimed, "I will be the one to break the curse." The emblem on the walls blazed brightly as the figure acknowledged with a nod. With an unearthly vitality, the frozen water appeared to come to life, with ripples on its surface. The air crackled with an otherworldly intensity as Alex started to drop towards the pool. The voices became more intense, their cold talons encircling us like a smothering hug. The temperature inside the chamber fell to an intolerable level as a brilliant light filled it. Alex was gone as the light faded, and the old markings on the walls became less visible. The creature turned to face me, hollow eyes, now obscured by a cold mist. "The sacrifice has been made, but the curse will not be broken until the coldest night arrives," it said. "You have witnessed the frozen whispers, and they shall linger until the appointed time." After saying so, the figure vanished into the darkness, leaving the underground room to myself. There was a strange silence in the air, and the symbols on the walls appeared to be whispering things I couldn't understand. And with everything that had happened that night bearing down on me, I emerged from the subway tunnels. The metropolis overhead welcomed me with its typical commotion, oblivious to the otherworldly energies that hid beneath its surface. The tale of ancient curses and sacrifices was skillfully constructed by the freezing whispers, leaving me to confront the realization that the coldest night was still to come. A feeling of impending doom descended upon the city as the days went by. As the temperature dropped more, there was an underlying tension in the air. The sensation persisted in my mind that the freezing whispers were out there, watching, just waiting for the coldest night to bring their evil force to bear. The scheduled evening approached with a ferocity that chilled my bones. The air seemed to sizzle with an alien force, and the city was enveloped in an embrace of ice. I could feel the eerie presence of the frozen murmurs as I strolled down the empty streets. They resonated in the breeze. I felt a power that I couldn't explain that brought me back to the deserted subway station. An ethereal light gleamed from the inscriptions on the walls, and the frozen lake waited to be sacrificed. The apparition stepped out of the shadows, melancholy knowledge shining in its eyes. It said, "The coldest night has arrived. The sacrifice has been made, but the curse will linger until the echoes of the frozen whispers are silenced." The figure pointed at the frozen pool after saying those remarks. I wavered, caught between the mystery that pulled me in and my concern that I might get mixed up in the old curse. The decision weighed heavily on me as the air crackled with an unearthly intensity. With a grudging capitulation, I walked down to the pool. The frozen whispers grew louder as the symbols on the walls pulsed with an ethereal brightness. The cold talons curled around me, and the room filled with blinding light. As the light faded, I was left standing by myself at the deserted subway station. The frozen water was still, and the symbols on the walls had faded. There was an unsettling calm after the frozen voices had ceased to reverberate. A deep void descended upon me as I emerged from the subway tunnels. The temperature had returned to something approaching normal, and the city above was no longer enveloped in an ice embrace. The sound of the frozen words had subsided, but at a cost that will never leave my spirit. Even though it has been years since that tragic night, the memories of the frozen voices continue to take. Even if the old curse has been lifted, the paranormal still casts a shadow over my dreams. The shuttered subway station is nevertheless a quiet witness to an unexplainable story. I can't help but wonder if the ice murmurs have actually been silenced, or if their ghostly presence still lingers in the chilly winds as winter settles upon the city once more. The frightening reminder that certain secrets Our best left unsettled is served by the echoes of that night, which are still resonating.